Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, my very good friend and colleague Judah Friedman, the host of The World According to Ben Stein. Big events this week in terms of politics, if politics are something that interests you, which it does, because obviously it has a great deal to do with how our government functions, if you want to use the term government loosely, very loosely these days. But of course, there was a debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump last Thursday night. It was a disaster for Joe Biden. But interestingly enough, although the Democrats are now busy figuring out how to throw Biden over the bus, or shall we say over the Titanic, because they're sinking as well, we have the New York Times and the other newspapers. I was actually at the airport today. Wasn't even a headline, wasn't even a mention of the debate. I mean, unbelievable that they couldn't produce a newspaper in time to do that. They obviously didn't want to. They wanted to get into the weekend and forget about it. But in any event, here's Judah Friedman. He's a great prognosticator of what occurred. I have to say, I mean, Judah frequently flatters me by saying, Larry, you're always right. In fact, Ben Stein says that too in the jacket of my book. But I believe that I am right. I know that I'm right. I predicted that the Democrats would get rid of Biden. They're now figuring out how to do that. Of course, the problem is he won't leave. He wants to maintain control of the Justice Department, his Gestapo. And of course, this is going to be a problem for the Democrats as well, how you get rid of the guy. And there are various theories about how it could be done. It could be done under the 25th Amendment, given the fact that he's not there mentally. That won't happen. They won't do that. They could go, the elders of the Democrat Party go to the White House and ask him nicely to leave. He won't do that either because he probably won't even know that they're standing in front of him. Or he could simply check out health-wise. I mean, if the guy really had any knowledge of what went on last Thursday, he probably would have a heart attack or a stroke. But he wasn't even there, be able to contemplate what he had done in terms of appearing as less than a zombie. You know, a zombie would appear alive. This guy appeared effectively dead. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Judah. Those are my preliminary remarks. We have some other things we want to talk about. Last Friday, there was a big ruling with regard to January 6th and also with regard to government regulation. It's huge, both of these rulings. Interestingly enough, the majority opinion was written by Chief Justice John Roberts. He wanted to take credit for this, but he got all of the conservatives on the court to join with him. But let's go back to the debate. Judah, what did you observe? What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, listen, I think we all went in, Republicans, conservatives. First of all, it's important to note that the last debate in 2020 had 73 million people tuning in during COVID. This had 49 million people last night. That tells you something. That's a very telling number. I
Why
think we
a telling number?
sorry.
Why is it a telling number?
Uh, Many people have made up their minds. I think I think COVID was a huge reason why 73 million people watched the debate. I mean, obviously everybody was stuck at home.
Right, they had nothing else to
Uh,
do.
they had nothing else to do. But listen, Trump did what we needed him to do, which was be stable. He didn't have to go for the kill shot, hit the three-pointer. He took as many layups as possible. Every rule that was implemented in that debate was by Biden's camp. So going in, it was great that that Trump was stable. He didn't make any of his crazy faces, nothing. And he didn't lash out at anybody. He didn't lash out at the moderators. So that was our hope, right? As conservatives or as Trump supporters or as lovers of the free world. If you were a Biden supporter, you were praying that a corpse didn't show up. And am I allowed to say I watched the debate next to you, Larry?
Yeah, sure.
Are people,
Yeah,
okay, so
right.
we were watching the debate together. How many times did I ask you, what did he just say?
Yeah. Well, I thought one of Trump's best lines was when one of the moderators, whether it was Jake Tapper or Dana Lash, I don't remember, asked him to comment on what Biden had said. Trump said, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't do that because no one can figure out what he said."
Mm.
But that was
Right, yeah,
one of
yeah,
the best lines.
but I thought, and again, I thought the moderators did. We really do have to sometimes compliment people when compliments are work, when they deserve it. And I thought Tapper and Dana, is it Dana Lash or Bash? I thought that
Dana Bash. Yeah, let's not be too gratuitous in this regard. The only reason they controlled themselves is because they had been bashed, pun intended, for several weeks as having trashed Donald Trump previously, called him everything short of Hitler.
oh,
And
they
they
did call him Hitler.
maintained some
Not sure.
semblance of journalistic, quote, integrity. And so it was actually a good pushback, by Fox News, I'll give them credit here, and others, to put them on defense. And they were good boys and girls last night.
You know what the other good pushback was obviously when the State of the Union, he came out, they over medicated him, right? I mean, they gave him whatever you give a horse. And he came out like, obviously everybody that with eyes saw that he was on something. And last night he came out, I don't think he was on anything. He was on regular Joe Biden. And I thought maybe they thought they could rest him for a week or change his sleeping, whatever. It didn't work. And it just didn't work.
Yeah, I think they did the opposite. Actually, before we get to that, getting back to Trump's commenting on CNN, I get tweets from him. I get them from Biden. I get them from Obama. I get them from everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
But I thought one of Trump's funnier tweets. He thanked CNN profusely, said, "Thank you for allowing me to mop the floor with Joe Biden."
No. I mean, he was like, again, he was in top notch. He was in top notch form last night. He didn't, everything was set up for him to fail, and he didn't fail. And I mean, what did he call him? He said, "You're a bad Palestinian."
Well, first of all, and I said this to you at the time. Yes, he was smart because he stayed with big issues. He stayed with issues of the economy. He stayed with issues of border immigration, pointed out how that was costing Black jobs and also, a risk to our national security. He went on and on. He hit all the big points. Biden got lost in the weeds because I think here what really happened is, notwithstanding the fact that he's essentially brain dead to begin with, is that they over-prepared him. They stuffed all these facts into his head. Of course, most of the facts, were distorted, and not correct. And he couldn't figure out which ones to pull out of the hat. So consequently, he would make statements about one thing, and then like abortion, for instance, and then without any transition, he would shift over to Medicare and healthcare, which there was no transition with regard to his discussion of abortion rights. So this is something which, he just completely collapsed. And it was so bad that, and I turned on, you were watching it as well, but I turned on MSNBC and CNN, and they were actually more critical than even Fox News because they were horrified by the thought of having this guy run for president. It would be an automatic loss at that point. So let's hypothesize a little bit how they get rid of him. How do you think they get rid of him?
Okay, so and you're a lawyer, you're a data person. Well, you're not a data person. I'm the data person, you're the lawyer. So, but let's go on, you're both, Larry. And let's go on, we have 8 years of evidence to go with you, right? We have 8 years of evidence that they're willing to do whatever it takes to take him down, right? Is that fair to say?
Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have Marshawn coming up, the sentencing. So I do believe they might sentence him to jail, thinking that would be, again, a kill shot, in this case, literally or figuratively. I do think that is an option. And then I think that they are, doling him, Bob doling him or John McCaining him and saying, we're accepting the loss that they're going to lose, but then afterwards fighting in the courts that a criminal can't be president. And I think that's their plan. I don't think, Larry, they think they could win right now. Even before the debate, Larry, the numbers that were coming in are atrocious. The numbers are not on Biden's side.
Here's what's interesting. I mean, you're, more optimistic. And again, I don't support anyone as head of a public interest group in terms of telling people who to vote for. But the fact is that they're going to do a number on Trump for sure. Marshawn will come up with something which, tars Trump further. You've got a decision on immunity coming out of the Supreme Court next week, and I don't think it's going to be favorable to Trump. Tanya Chutkan, the very corrupt judge over there in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, frankly, someone who's anti-white, anti-male in particular, and has, expressed that herself, will speed that trial up if there's a finding of no immunity. And then he'll be tried before the election. That'll be a big one. And of course, the judge down there in Florida, Eileen Cannon, although not the sharpest knife in the drawer, I've appeared in front of her. She's really almost as bad as the Democrats say she is. But in this case, she's performing a valuable function in pushing off the election. And she's doing it, intentionally. She owes her judgeship to Trump. But yes, this is what's on the horizon. It really is still unknown what will happen. Now, I was also referring to how you get rid of Biden, okay? And what was interesting is they brought on Kamala Harris, right after basically Biden just blew up on stage. She's obviously had a facelift. She looked pretty good. She was rested. She doesn't do anything. So obviously she probably just goes out, sits at the swimming pool somewhere in Brentwood or wherever she lives. And, I think they're going to bring her on now, and they'll have Biden basically take an exit stage left, but for the fact that he wants to maintain control of the Justice Department. Of course, he has nothing to worry about being prosecuted because the Republicans wouldn't prosecute him either, frankly. So that's kind of where we are right now. And I predict that Kamala Harris ultimately will be inserted. She'll then choose a vice presidential candidate. It'll be either Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama, probably Michelle Obama at this point. It'll be interesting because you're going to have two Black female candidates on the roster for the Democrats. And I frankly think it's not going to be a cakewalk. I don't think that Trump is a guaranteed winner under those circumstances because the American people, are very short-sighted. They vote on the basis of appearance. In Gavin Newsom's case, he's a good-looking guy. He's bisexual. He can appeal to heterosexuals and homosexuals. And you've got potentially, if they put in Michelle Obama, someone who even has more appeal. So I don't think that Trump I don't think it's a lock, in terms of.
Larry, I love you like a brother.
Couple this with the Democrats' control of the major cities and the fraud. It'll be like you've never seen before because the left knows that they have a hold on us. They have a virtual dictatorship on us. They're not going to want to give it up. It'll be like Atlas Shrugged all over again. And they know that in 4 years, actually in just a few days, that Trump would dismantle nearly everything that they started. And so this is a high stakes game, which is going to be also laced with violence from the left. You're going to see that in the streets, particularly in Chicago at the convention. So anyway, give me your thoughts. That's my 2 cents.
I love you like a brother, or like a stepbrother. But Larry, if this was 3 months ago, I could see what you're saying, right? What are we in? July? Let's say July to August, November, October, November. We're 4 months, 4 days, 5 days from the election. Early balloting starts in many places in about 6 weeks. Immediately, almost after the DNC event, the ballots will be out. Newsom is his unfavorability rating in California. He's at 44%. Pennsylvania, he's underwater at 13% behind. Michelle Obama trails Trump. I don't want to say why because I don't want to get into more trouble. But Michelle Obama is not. Obama is an outlier. Michelle Obama is not Barack Obama, and that's just the reality. I don't see it.
Here's what you're not factoring in, is that the stakes for the left are so high that if you think media bias and fake news was strong before, it'll go through the roof. They will do everything they can to prop up the Democrat candidates. And it'll be something like, to use a phrase of Trump, like you've never seen before.
Can I ask you a question? Let me ask
Yeah.
you this question. I'm going on the theory right now that they don't want to win, that they're accepting this election as a loss right now. And they'll go after Trump for 4 years and they'll get their right candidate in place. I don't necessarily think that they want to win. If they wanted to win, they would have gotten rid of him at any point. So I don't think they're looking at this strategically as a win. The worst thing that happened to Larry, to their cause, was Trump losing in 2020, supposedly losing in 2020. Because can you imagine if they had the right candidate, if Trump won and they had the right candidate in 2024? We'd be screwed for a long time.
But you're not taking into account, Judah, that you can do a lot of damage in a very short period of time. And
Look at what
so the
Biden's
way
done.
damage as they perceive it, with conservative and libertarian principles being put into place. And you can see it today, and we're going to talk about that briefly, that the court is taking a conservative activist role. They're forgetting about stare decisis. They're throwing it out the window. They don't like what was done before. I give them some credit. I don't give them much credit most of the time, but I give them credit for these two decisions today. In the Fisher case, dealing with J-6, we'll talk about that, and Chevron dealing with administrative regulation in Washington, D.C. And the left is ideologues. They are socialists. They are communists. They are atheists. They don't give up power easily. And plus, couple that with the fact that people's careers, are on the line. The very fact that you control the government not only gives you a lot of perks and financial and other benefits while you're in the government, but it gives the opportunity to reap other kinds of financial and other perks, either illegally or when you leave office. And so there are a lot of people that have their vested interest in not losing. So in all due respect, my good friend, I don't subscribe to that theory. And that's why, as I've said, if Trump gets elected, if he does get elected, this country is going up in flames. The left will be out in the streets, and I suggest that we all exercise our Second Amendment rights and arm up, frankly, because it's going to be violent. And last but not least, let me add this, and then you can comment as well, and then we'll move on. Is that I don't want to give the impression that, and I'm vehemently anti-Biden. We've indicted him and convicted him at Freedom Watch with regard to bribery from communist China, Ukraine, and Russia, and negligent homicide in Afghanistan. But the flip side of what went on last night got completely lost in the wash, is that Trump, although I thought he was very effective generally, made a lot of statements which were not accurate. Now, the left is trying to do their best with that, right now. I mean, for instance, saying stuff like, everybody thought Roe v. Wade was bad. Okay, I know what he meant. You and I know what he meant. Okay, he meant, the people that are opposed to abortion. But there were many statements like that. And they were unable to use that, unfortunately, because Biden was just so bad that really the story was, let's get rid of him fast before we all go down with the ship.
I want to give you a little bit of a counter to that. He answered that question in the best way he could without harming the base. And I think he did it extremely eloquently.
I'm not saying he didn't. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying that he did make a lot of statements that weren't accurate. Okay.
But sometimes you have to. And to compare and contrast, so did the other guy.
Oh yeah, that was even.
And that'll never be fact checked. So, but my point is, he did it where he had to do it. And I wish there was a point where he brought up Charlottesville again, and I wish Trump would have said Snopes came out the other day and debunked that after 7 years, and had a quip that that's how long it takes for the truth to be, to come out sometimes. Obviously, you and I both know that it could take 70 years, especially if it's the FDA.
Sometimes it never comes out. We don't know.
Most of the time, right? It never comes out, and the truth is out there. No, it doesn't mean it's ever coming out. So I think he handled that question very well as he could have.
I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just, my only observation is that Biden was so bad and so self-destructed that the left didn't even focus to any great degree on what they would ordinarily focus on, which would be a lack of, accurate recitation of fact. We know what Trump meant, and sometimes you have to use a little hyperbole. Sometimes you have to make a point, and he did that extremely well. And he wasn't, a Boy Scout during that thing. I thought he was very aggressive. I mean, he must have at least 20 times said that Biden was the worst president in American history, certainly right about that. He talked about a nuclear holocaust on the horizon caused by Biden's complete disaster of foreign relations. He talked about blacks losing jobs to immigrants coming into the country. Like he did initially when he announced that he was going to run in 2016, essentially referred to all immigrants as criminals, which he basically did. And so this, but he got away with it because the left is preoccupied now with getting rid of Biden. And that is
but it's also, he was measured. It's so important to realize that he was measured. Larry, remember the split screen? And I kept on pointing this out to you, the split screen, which was their idea, right? The left wanted the split screen because remember in 2020, Trump was making the crazy faces and he couldn't control himself. And I love Trump. Everybody that knows me knows I'm number one on the Trump train. He couldn't control himself at points and he would go over the debate, whatever. So it worked out well for him, the fact that they had that shut off switch. The split screen worked on him perfectly well because he was great. And when you juxtapose that, remember to Biden was like this, looking into.
I'm not knocking him, Judah. You can probably figure out how I'm going to vote for. But his facial expressions weren't exactly Hollywood, believe me.
No, they were. What I'm saying is,
he had very bad makeup. Again, Biden was so bad that it didn't matter. But I found the most humorous part of the debate is when they argued over their golf handicaps. Obviously, I'm a golfer and I'm involved in the golf industry as well and represent a professional golfer. But to hear Biden when Trump said, well, I've won 2 club championships and they weren't the senior championships either. And there's a funny story about that, but which I won't get into. But Biden says, and then Trump said, you couldn't hit the ball 50 feet. He says, I've got great handicap. I'm a 6 handicap. And Trump said,
and then he changed it to 8 because I don't think he knows what a handicap is in golf.
No, I think he was talking about the fact that he's handicapped. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That was probably
no. My favorite, and I forgot to say this because I thought about it after, was when he said that the Border Patrol Union supports him and they came out right away and said they don't. I was thinking to myself, I think he means the other side's Border Patrol. Mexico's Border Patrol endorses him greatly, not the United States.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there was a lot of humor in last night, and it's fun to watch the left self-destruct and throw themselves on a sword. It was a lot of like, a samurai warrior in Japan, basically committing suicide. That's what they're doing. They're going to commit suicide and then they're going to resurrect themselves. Of course, not like Jesus because they don't believe in God generally. But this is what's going to happen. In any event, moving on to a new subject, were 2 very important Supreme Court decisions today. And again, I commend the Supreme Court. I don't always feel that way about them, but one dealt with J-6. And I'll keep it in simple terms so people can understand. And there were people that I was working with recently on J-6 that wound up getting convicted for some of these things. I was a consultant on that. But they got convicted for the fact that they had obstructed justice under a federal statute. And that statute has been read now by the Supreme Court to apply only to the destruction of evidence in a very narrow way, not going into the Capitol and trying to subvert an election. That's major because these individuals that I was consulting with got convicted of this obstruction, and Trump's also been charged with it. So this is a very positive development for J-6, and these individuals that I'm talking about should get a new trial as a result of it, because even though there were counts that dealt only with this particular statute on obstruction, the prosecutors used that to smear them with regard to the other counts, which have not been challenged and have not been overturned of both felonies and misdemeanors that were alleged to have occurred and for which they were convicted. So this is a major victory in J6. And of course, we have our cases at Freedom Watch. We have a class action in the Northern District of Florida over illegal surveillance of J6 parties. It's going to be refiled in a different format. And our good friend Siaka Massaquoi was indicted for mere misdemeanors. And he's, of course, an African-American actor, a very fine person, religious guy. But it goes on. And you can expect that the persecution of the J6 peaceful protesters will increase now, because this is virtually the only thing that the Biden Justice Department has left at this point. They were gutted. And then today, another decision written by John Roberts as the majority, on the court that he wrote for the majority, the other conservatives joined him, was an overturning of the Chevron decision. Now, I know a lot about that because I've done administrative law for many years. In fact, I was a prosecutor and a defense lawyer in the Consumer Affairs section of the Justice Department, where I represented the FDA, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the Federal Reserve Board, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and Consumer Product Protection Agency. So administrative agencies have taken laws written by Congress and perverted those laws, and they were being given under the Chevron decision, which has now been relegated to extinction, great deference in interpreting those statutes from a legal standpoint. Supreme Court said no, the agencies cannot interpret the statutes. They're basically just make fact-finding, and they can apply the statutes to the facts that have to be reasonable. But this basically guts regulation in Washington, D.C. And of course, the Justice Department is not going to pursue anything. It'll be private causes of action as long as the Democrats stay in control. But now these administrative agencies have lost essentially most of their power to pervert statutes and to over-regulate. And this is extremely good for the economy. It's going to free up a lot. So these are two really great decisions out of the Supreme Court. And it's interesting that they were written by Chief Justice John Roberts, who I'm not a fan of. Your thoughts, Judah?
Well, my thoughts are, remember, obviously, like I said to you, I'm happy you're happy with it. I trust your acumen on this way more than mine, not in my wheelhouse. We're very grateful for the political prisoners, but I'm also very grateful for the decision on the civilian prisoners to the homeless encampments. And that's a major thing. I live in Los Angeles. And for people that are not familiar with this, we have the highest amount of, by leaps and bounds, the most homeless in the country. And our city, our once really beautiful city, I think Larry will agree with this, take politics out of put politics in the equation at a certain point. This was the greatest place in the world to live, Larry. I mean, this was the place you'd watch on television shows like the Rockford Files or anything and go, I want to be there. And everybody here is now saying, I don't want to be here because.
Well, yeah. Go on, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just gonna say, I people sometimes really need to understand. And you had the mayor, this jackass Karen Bass, who did nothing during the pogrom on Sunday on Pico to the Jews. You had her come out and say what a disappointment it is. What a disappointment it is that people that pay taxes have less rights than the people that don't pay taxes and that are homeless.
But it doesn't apparently cure, loitering and hanging out on non-public property. It applies to government property. Okay, so it's limited in that respect because it's hard to reach the private aspect of things. But yes, that is a positive decision. I agree, and they criminalized it. I mean, they're not going to charge anyone with crimes. They don't charge anybody with crimes in Los Angeles, or for that matter, anywhere else in a major city. But it will give the authority to remove these people, and probably that won't happen either when it comes to Los Angeles or San Francisco or Minneapolis or Portland or Seattle. So it's kind of a Pyrrhic victory. And the ACLU is going to be in there like mad,
Well, the ACLU started this.
Yeah, of course. Well, during Reagan's administration, there were people I remember because I was living in Washington at the time who were sleeping on grates, who were dying of the cold and just rotting there. I mean, they would sleep on the grates because steam would come out and keep them warm. And Reagan could not remove them and put them in a nice place. The ACLU said, no, they have a right to sleep there and they have a right to die, as a matter of fact. So it's very complicated. That decision may be good on paper, but in practice, it probably will accomplish little to nothing.
There's also something very important to bring up as far as this has been a very good week for the right around the world, and a very good week. Obviously, in France with Le Pen, I think she's ahead. And I want to remind people, Le Pen, her father was a vicious anti-Semite. Her father was a vicious anti-Israel. And she came out and she said, Israel is the canary in the coal mine. And what did she say? Israel is the canary in the coal mine. You can't destroy the coal mine. And or something like that. And very in favor of Israel. And then you have,
I like to follow. It's interesting. I like to follow French politics. That basically was my part of my major in political science at Duke University, and I didn't pick up on that this week.
Yeah, so it's a very big week. And then you have, obviously, in the UK, you have Farage far ahead, which is another extremely big thing. You might disagree with him on certain foreign policies, but I like Farage very well. And you have in Canada, somebody on the right winning. You can't get rid of Trudeau for another year, but the tides are really turning.
Yeah, and in Argentina.
And in Argentina,
America,
yeah,
same thing.
That's exactly right. And people blame it on austerity oftentimes, right? That's like the big thing. It's always about money, but it's not always about money. It's about people don't like being pushed around. And when you look at those countries, Larry, like Germany or other places, they've had to cancel music events because of the rapist Muslims that they've allowed into their countries. They've had to cancel music. They've had to cancel their lives. So the young people who are going to the right over there, not necessarily just about money, it's about their futures.
You're right. And Brexit was ahead of its time, and the British felt it first, and they implemented Brexit. It basically was a reaction to continental Europe, the permissive atmosphere there, and allowing unbridled immigration from terrorist countries in the Middle East. And I might add, not all people that came from the Middle East were terrorists. I mean, there's a lot of good people that occupy jobs and positions that are Muslim and Arab in France and elsewhere. But there's always been this tension, particularly in France, between the Algerians and the native French. In fact, at one point, Algerian generals tried to take over Paris, the putsch, many years ago, when de Gaulle was in power. It was blocked. But yes, it's a reaction to what's been going on. It's a reaction to the politicians selling out the people, and the favorability ratings of European leaders are even lower than Biden, if you can believe it. And they're lucid, but they're also very leftist. So there is a worldwide push against the left right now, and that is a positive thing. But for the fact that they've so loused everything up, both here and around the world, that we are on the brink of a potential World War III and even a nuclear holocaust. Iran is just days away from having an atom bomb. The Israelis are doing, they're doing training because they may have to react finally after they've screwed around all these years and done nothing, along with the United States. And we are in a very precarious position. By the way, just as an aside, a funny story which is out there is that President Macron's wife is believed to be a man. Okay, so I don't know if you caught that. So maybe she has something, and she'll have something in common with Michelle Obama, because a lot of people believe that as well, including Joan Rivers, may her soul rest in peace on that. But that's part and parcel to what's been going on. But let's talk about international relations, because that was also a subject of debate yesterday. Judah, give me your thoughts.
Listen, I think Trump took the layup. I think he did brilliantly with the layup. I think Biden's foreign policy record, obviously, there's nothing that everybody knows it's atrocious. I don't think anybody, so there was no utility. There was literally zero utility in Trump talking and getting into the weeds on foreign policy. I thought he handled the tariff stuff well. I thought he handled the Russia-Ukraine thing extremely well. He handled the Middle East thing as well as he had to. He didn't need, with Biden being so bad, he didn't need to get into those things and I love that he brought up Bush, Obama, and Biden. all lost land with Ukraine and Russia. And the fact is, and the reality is, and during his term, it didn't happen. And these constant lies that Biden was spreading about all these things, and even the NATO thing, he handled his NATO answer how all of us want him to handle the NATO answer. We'll
Yeah.
be in NATO if everybody pays up.
Let me put a caveat in here. And again, I know why Trump did it. Trump's not going to put 10% tariffs in. Okay. That's political. And Biden, as brain dead and as stupid as he is, was correct. Is the tariffs will be highly inflationary. It'll creep, if you do it across the board, and it's not, industry by industry where, there may be an effect to save an industry, under, certain dire circumstances. Because, I used to be an international trade lawyer. This is what I did. I defended U.S. importers and foreign companies. Is that's highly inflationary, and it's not good for the economy, because the reality is today is that most of our goods, come from overseas, and that'll increase the cost by 10%. So that's not going to happen. But it sounds good. It
I
sounds
just want
good.
to say,
So he
Larry,
threw it out there.
I just want to say one thing. Nobody is discussing what was discussed last night.
That's right.
Okay. Everybody is discussing what cloud or who Biden was staring at in a field in France last night. Nobody is discussing anything we're talking about. They might be discussing some of the women's stuff, some few things, but nobody is talking about.
Yeah, I thought that Trump's line was, "I didn't have sex with a porn star." That's a classic. Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, and he even took that.
No, I don't
well.
consider her to be a porn star. I had sex with her, but she wasn't a porn star. She was
But
a
he even had.
she was an adult actress. Okay.
But he even handled that well. He didn't go after. Listen, he didn't go after Hunter Biden. He could have gone after Hunter Biden way worse, and he could have gone in the weeds on that. And he held back. He simply said he's got 3 felonies. He didn't talk about being a deadbeat father. He didn't talk about Biden being a deadbeat grandfather. See, with Biden, you always have to be very careful. It's a treading, because he always has the ace in his hole of his wife and daughter dying, and then Beau dying of cancer. But if you want to talk about a moral alley cat, he's right. He did call blacks super predators. He didn't acknowledge the fact that he had a granddaughter. His son is sleeping with his dead son's wife, introducing her to crack, having her bury a gun for him. So I'm very actually proud that Trump didn't get into the weeds and he let Biden.
I'm surprised he didn't talk about the bribes. He did make it a reference to him getting money from China, but he could.
Right, but he really held his own, and even when it came to the laptop, he didn't go full on Trump. And
Biden.
no, Trump didn't go full on Trump in the sense of where all of us are scared. We know he knows talking points, but he doesn't know sometimes when to stop the talk. It wasn't a rally. He had time left in his questions. He didn't jump over Biden. It was as smooth
he handled it well, and ironically, the format worked in his favor, because they didn't give him enough time to ramble on. So it actually was helpful. They only got 2 minutes.
Yeah, that was the funniest part of that was the funniest part of the debate, was when the moderators would say, "You still have 84 seconds to answer your question." And you're sitting there like, to Trump, "You still have 64 seconds left to answer your question." It was
funny watching them. I know Jake Tapper going way back. He was a leftist, but he was a reasonable leftist. He went crazy when he went to CNN. He basically, did oral sex with Jeff Zucker, figuratively speaking, who was then running it, and he became this radical Trump hater. In fact, I used to write an email saying, "Jake, what happened to you? You've lost all objectivity." And Dana Bash, I mean, she's just a joke in general. But they were like little school kids. They were scared to challenge Trump last night because of fear that they would lose any sense of journalistic integrity. So it worked in his favor. And give Trump credit, he is very street smart. That's his primary attribute. He understands the way things work. He understands dynamics. So basically, by accepting CNN, he backed them into a corner, along with the help of, the conservative talk show hosts that also, kept a drumbeat going on for weeks about how Tapper and Bash would, try to bash him, so to speak. So it was very, very clever. Let's shift a little bit now to July 4th. Okay, this show is being produced right before July 4th. When I think of July 4th and I see all the paraphernalia, the flags and everything else, I think it's great. I got a flag behind me here. Sometimes I have court hearings and all of a sudden my adversaries wind up with a flag behind them if I have a judge who comes out of the military or something like that. But, I kind of get a sad feeling when I see that the true patriots out there that love July 4th. And I realize that probably the majority in this country, I hate to say it, could care less about July 4th. And I know that, for instance, when I'm in certain cities that are liberal, and I don't use the word liberal, I mean leftist, and I'm wearing my flag pin, people will say to me, Larry, I see you're wearing a flag pin. You must be a supporter of Donald Trump. And they just write out of the equation that the Democratic Party and the left has any desire to, pay homage to our founding fathers and the colonialists that created a great nation on or about July 4th. I commend people, or I urge people to watch the HBO miniseries, John Adams, or read the book. Great, it's a great thing. And this is, really the beauty of this country all rolled into one holiday. I think the Declaration of Independence is the most beautiful document and meaningful document that was ever written. It exceeds the Constitution in many ways. It creates broad parameters. And while our founding fathers got most things right in the Constitution, they got some things wrong as well, such as lifetime tenure for judges, etc. So anyway, I want to get your thoughts on that because, you see these people like us who are walking around, jubilant on July 4th, wanting to celebrate it. But, frankly, I think most of this country just views it as a holiday that they get off from work.
I think that's become most holidays in America. I think that's become, I pray that people have parties and they celebrate July 4th. I pray that people, and I have to sort of wrap this up in a second because I'll have to wrap it up in a second, but I pray that people, Charles Krauthammer used to have an event at his house where he'd have people read from the Constitution, and people would pass around and read from the Constitution. I think that was incredible, and I think we should realize what we don't want to lose, that this country is brilliant, it's exceptional, and it's right now it's hurt. And my favorite two things to do on July 4th, other than if I get the chance to hang out with friends, is watch Independence Day, best July 4th movie ever made, and listen to Ragged Old Flag by Johnny Cash. And if people aren't familiar with Ragged Old Flag, I encourage them to listen to it because right now our flag is ragged. It's been shot through. It's been whatever, however he says it in his song. But it survived. It survived so much.
I would also ask people to watch. It's one of my favorite movies. I think I've seen it 5 times on airlines. Top Gun Maverick. I mean that really,
Yeah,
gets
100%.
your juices flowing. I mean that's what the military should be. And also they're
And
taking
kudos to Jerry Bruckheimer, by the way, for not caving into China and putting the Taiwanese flag on his jacket. And Jerry Bruckheimer is a good conservative, and kudos to him for giving up Chinese money. Most people would never do that. So God bless him for that. So I hope everybody has a safe
He produced
and happy.
that film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got to say, as a side as well, we'll close it out right now. Is that Tom Cruise is a great actor, but he's been made a pariah in Hollywood. Never got any Academy Awards, never got anything to speak of. But he is a great actor. He's idiosyncratic in many ways, but that's probably good. Anyway, that's enough. And listen to the song of Toby Keith, Red, White, and Blue. Unfortunately, his prediction of kicking the terrorists in the ass never came to pass soon enough. But he passed on, and that's a great song for July 4th.
We'll put a boot in your ass. It's the American way.
The American way. I'm going to attach it to this video. I love that song.
And that's you.
Yeah. All right, Guy. Have a happy holiday. We'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, go to freedomwatchusa.org, contribute to our cause. We are your Justice Department with tax-deductible contributions. freedomwatchusa.org. We need more lawyers. We need more paralegals. We need to get bigger. We need to do the job because certainly our so-called government won't do it.
100%. Amen.
Thank you, Judah. God bless.
God bless you.